This is our second video on how to install a floor. If you haven't seen the first one, I went over some really helpful tips to help get you started in purchasing and preparing your room for new flooring. But for now, let's get into actually laying the floor. We're going to start off with tools. So now we got to get our tools ready to actually put in the floor. First off, to cut the planks, you're going to need to have a box cutter, utility knife. In addition to that, I like to use a razor knife. Now, one of the worst injuries I had was from using these. And one time I put my thumb on it like an idiot and I just cut right through my thumb. And it really goes through that vinyl like no problem. In addition to that, you're going to need to be able to guide it. So I find that a combination square works best. And the metal guide is going to be easy for your razor to follow and you don't have to worry about cutting anything. I'm going to bring my speed square. It's always lined up to 0, whereas the combination square is going to change on you. And then I also like to bring, I want to call it a carpenter's square. Other things that are helpful with measuring and stuff like that. I received these as a gift, and I've used them here and there. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes it's a little finicky, but I'm going to bring these just to see if they work. But then additionally, nice, I think they're channel grips, I don't know, they're pliers. If I have to cut a corner within a piece, I love using these because you can get a nice firm grip and you can just torque it right out, just twist it right out of position. And the last thing I'm gonna need is a rubber mallet. You also need knee pads because it basically works where the front of it is almost hooked down and the back of a piece is hooked up. And so it locks into place that way, and that's why it's waterproof. Okay, I think I have all my tools. Next step is to make sure that your floor is clean. Any little bits of debris that we cut off, you want to get that off, because when you put the flooring on top, any little bits that stick underneath, when you step on the flooring, it may just squeeze it and make it squeak and make it creak, and you don't want that. You want to put the floor in and be done with it. Now, I also have some furniture still here, like the bureau, but it's too big to move to another room. So the way I see it, I'm going to get half this room finished after vacuuming, and then I'm going to move the bureau on top of it, and then once I move the bureau, I'm going to vacuum again. So, Mr. Dyson, this is your home. This is where you're going to be for the next however long that I'm working on this. Before we actually get started. So the first thing, you need to figure out how much of the piece you're going to have to remove for the first and the last row. Here's the thing. If you start off the room like this and it ends and you only have a tiny sliver left, that tiny sliver not only won't work as well as far as sitting flat on the ground, but it's gonna look like, oh good, you're cute, you did something, you tried it. Instead, what you need to do is figure out how many of these pieces are going to be used going throughout the entire depth of the room. Step 1, you need to measure the width of the entire room out. And what I'm gonna do is measure the distance from the end to the edge. You are not going to see this bottom portion. This is going to interlock with the front piece. So we don't include this with our width measurement. Instead, we are going to go from that front edge to the back. To help clarify this idea of splitting the difference between the first and last row, here's my room. It's 123 inches wide and my plank is 5 5/8. Beautiful. So what I have to do is divide my room, 123 inches, by the width of the plank. And I end up with 21.866666 planks. So here I've got 21 full rows of planks, and I'm going to end up with a partial plank. I have to cut this one at the end. I want to figure out how much I have to cut this, because it could become important if I'm looking at the room and it's a sliver of a row. So to find out how long that last row is going to be, I take away the full number of planks, and I take this decimal value and multiply it by the width of the plank. So my last row would end up being 4 7/8 inches. Not that bad. Your case might be different, but check that. So what does this mean? I would take my standard plank and I would subtract the remaining distance to figure out how much I got to cut off. 3/4 of an inch. So that row is going to be 3/4 of an inch shorter. Now, what I can do instead of having one small row and then 21 normal rows is I can split this difference, the 3/4 of an inch, between the first row and the last row. So if I divide 3/4 of an inch by 2, I end up with 0.375 removed. That's, 3/8. So I remove the 3/8 from the first and the last row, and I still get a full room of planks. My first row and my last row would be 5¼ inches wide, and my 20 uncut pieces would go in between them. This is a more polished look. The second thing that we have to do is a little more tedious. We're going to go into all but one of our boxes, and we are going to organize these by pattern. It takes a while, but they print these, and it's mass produced. You're only going to have like 5 or 6 different types of prints that they're going to include in a box. Here, if I put these two next to each other, but you can see it's a complete duplicate. And you're going to have a variety of these duplicates that are extended at different lengths along the plank. That's what we're looking for. All right, so we're getting started. First piece is always the easiest because you're just going to throw it right in the corner. The way I set it up, no good. You want to leave a gap. All right, so what I'm doing, I'm leaving 2 pieces in the back to leave a gap so it can expand. This is going to get covered in our quarter round, so I really don't care. What would be terrible is if the floor started buckling because I didn't care about this. Now I'm paying attention to which side is the back. Now that I've got it lined up, I find it's helpful to use the edge of the hammer. I'm just going to tap it. Good. Alright, now here's where things get interesting. I'm approaching the end, and I only have this much space. So I can't fit a full piece, I have to cut it. So the way that I set myself up, I'm going to take my piece, make sure it's the correct way. I'm going to line it up to where it's going to end. So I'm leaving a gap to the side. And now what I have to do is mark while it's flipped over. I need to keep this side, but I'm trying to get rid of this side. So to do this, you just flip it over like that. Now I position it the way I want. So using this end piece, I'm going to make a mark, and it's really hard to see, but you should have a tiny mark. Is now score a line. He shoots, he scores! Now that I've got it scored, you're going to see it. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to hold the crease and bend it. Quick snap. Like that. This piece is going to be my good piece that goes in. Position it on the wall. I'm going to use my spacers. Once you get that first line set up, it's going to go much faster. So at this point, you're going to need your mallet, you're going to need to have your square, and you're going to need your knife. Now to help you along with this, there's something I want you to keep in mind. When you're cutting pieces and you have extra cutoffs, save them. Why? Here. This piece has the top. Nope, that's the bottom. It has the top still, and the bottom, and this side. What does that mean? I can put it on a left wall. Now, this piece here seems useless, but I have the back still, and I have the right. I could put this in the top left part of a closet. So I always save my pieces, and I try to just organize them in little side piles. I don't throw them out till the end. With this spare piece, I have this side. Here's the front, here's the back. So I can put this left end on the wall. and I'm going to start my next row with this. To start the next row, I'm going to use my cut edge, tilt it up into the groove, and slide it down. And I want to just use my hands just to make sure it's nice and flat. But here, it's going to give you different end points for your planks. You're going to need to have different end points for your planks. Otherwise, it looks lazy, it looks bad. Once I have that first piece, I don't have to cut. I just lay down the next row. So let's say you reach a point where I can't put down like a full-size plank because then it'll match up right here and it's too close. So now you're going to create your own. And now we're going to decide where we want it to stop. I'm thinking here. So what I'm going to do, put it upside down here, put my mark, get my square. The original piece looked like this. I'm going to take this piece and slide it to the end. So as I'm laying down my pieces, sometimes you'll notice something wrong with one as you put it in. To get rid of the piece, what I do is I pick it up, slip my finger underneath, and karate chop. Give it a little hit, and it'll pop out no problem. Get your finger in there, hit it, and it'll release it so you can replace the piece that's busted. Alright, so you've reached a point where you need something that'll be able to latch in here and make it around the corner here. So we have to do 2 cuts. So for the first step, here, we're going to get to the point that it runs into the wall. And in order to do that, we need to be as flat as we can be, like right on this edge as if it was being placed. Then I'm going to get my square. Now I'm going to get my square to that wall. And I don't trust the wall, so I'm going to extend it till it hits. And then I'm going to take a little off because we need a gap. The second part is I need to now set it up as if it were in the groove. And I need to, let's see, mark this distance. We should measure the distance here to know how far our other line needs to go. I get this ruler. Let's see, 3 3/8. So now I get to this point, and I need to mark 3 3/8 from the front. Now I'm going to use the end of my line here with the point I marked here, and with my carpenter's square, let's see, I'm going to score a line. And this is one of those moments that I said that it was really handy to have your pliers. I'm going to get rid of this part. And now I'm just going to split this apart. I'm going to split it apart here. There we go. Make my way down. Let's see, so here I bend it in half. I just need to score that. Alright. I actually think we're good.
These types of cuts are trickier. In this example, I'm trying to cut out a piece to go around this corner. So to do that, I'd start it as if it were a corner piece, and I'd line it up on the left edge. The only difference is that I have to mark two different widths, and I have to estimate the depth of the cut based on where the plank lands on the material. So I'm going to do my best to measure the distance from the top of the plank to the depth of the material, and I'm going to work my way in.
Now, when I'm popping these pieces with pliers, I'm trying to replicate that same action when you flip it upside down and you pull up the plank. So to do that, I put my pliers on the waist. I'm going to twist it so it pulls up. If I went the other way, it's going to snap what I want to keep. So I'm always pulling the waste material upwards. I'm going to go lefty for you guys. Grab it. I'm going to twist it so that the waste material goes up. And this is waste, so I'm just ripping away so I can get a better grip and make my full depth. I'm trying to get to my depth. Now, as I get close, here's where it's ending. What I want to be able to do, I want to be able to get my pliers all the way in to the depth that I need. There we go. Because they're just trying to ease that corner out. This is the critical point where it could snap and break something. So you want to make sure that you get this corner lifted so that you can either cut it away or pull it with your pliers.
This one's pretty straightforward. So you reverse the motion. You tilt the front of the plank upwards, slide it in, and then slide it to the left to interlock with the other piece. Oh, these. So I need the right side to stay low enough to fit under an unmovable object. And I need the left side to snap into place. But in order for it to fit into place, I need to slide it to the right. So I'm going to start by getting the groove in the front into the channel, and I'm going to place my foot on it to help me twist the piece. Using a rubber mallet, I lightly and gently tap it to the right to get it under the unmovable object. Once it shifts into place, I can tap it in like a normal plank. Last row. So we need to cut this one down to depth. In order to cut it to depth, we can use the same methodology that we used to cut it to width. Flip the plank over, make sure you're cutting the back of the plank, and you can cut it using a box cutter or, as I chose, a table saw.
I have to hammer it here. So what I did, I took my pliers with this rubber grip, I aimed it in like that, and I used it by like a chisel. I hammered the head here, and it was able to apply the force of the hammer all the way to the back.
Hindsight. If I were to do this again, I would have started from the opposite side. That way my floors could have started under the heater, and then I would have been making my way back to the weird closet and threshold cuts. So now to wrap up. First, you need to determine whether or not you need to split the difference between your front piece and your back piece. Fun fact, I didn't. I just kept it the way it was, and it looks like this. Looks good to me. After that, you need to distribute and organize your planks based on their patterns. You need to distribute them around the room, and you need to organize your different tiles so you can easily pick them. One critical component, make sure there are no gaps between your tiles. Any tiny gaps are going to multiply throughout the duration of your entire room, so make sure they are perfectly sealed tight to each other. As you're laying your planks around the perimeter of the room, make sure you leave a gap. That floor is going to expand and contract, and if there's no space, it's going to buckle and be terrible. This concludes the second portion of our floor laying project. Next up, we are going to be cutting and installing the trim in the room. That includes cord around, which is going to hide those gaps. If you found this video helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, I don't know, smash that bell, whatever they do on YouTube.